Hong Kong for the last generation.
On
You have a choice.
BakerMotor.com, the Republican candidate
I did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
that
realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barbers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Backfire with John Stanberry and myself, Steve Doball Hickson, and our chief engineer, Daniel Brantley.
Just a moment.
And Franklin Chansey's late this morning. We hope he'll be here.
If you have any knowledge of his whereabouts, please contact authorities.
Paging Franklin Chansey to Whoop FM.
If you've seen him wandering through the streets in the cold, let us know. Well, anyway, there's lots to talk about. I was hoping Franklin would be here this morning because I'm sure he'd like to start crowing about Trump not getting his way. And now the Democrats are saying, let them just negotiate everything. Let them just negotiate. What do you think?
Negotiate with who?
The Senate says that they don't need Trump to do any negotiation. They'll handle everything.
Well, the problem's not the Senate. The Republicans control the Senate. The problem's the House, where Nancy's made a deal with these crazy progressives not to let Trump have anything. There are cracks in all of this. There are some more centrist Democrats that this past week have actually been pretty vocal about going on the record that they do support border control. And several of them have said, now look, it's not a wall. One of them actually said it's not a wall from sea to shining sea. So there are cracks in that. Of course, those are the same centrists that Ocasio-Cortez and the progressives have announced they're going to target in the next primary cycle.
You know, it's just crazy. It's just crazy that we can't agree on anything.
I agree.
I mean, can we not agree on anything? What cracks me up is one time the Democrats want the border wall, and the next time they don't. It's a matter of Trump.
They supported border walls under Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. So this has nothing to do. Matter of fact, it sets aside the safety and security of the American citizens because they hate Trump and they view this. He's made such an issue about this. They view any kind of money they give him for a wall as vindicating him, and they're not willing to do it.
It's just a political deal.
Now, who cares how many people on the border are killed in border crime? Who cares how many Kate Steinleys get shot while they're out with their father? Because we've got to make sure we deny Trump a victory.
You know, it's amazing to me, John, how this president, I mean, if you think, let's think back. This started when he was a candidate. The hatred towards him, and then the Democrats have never let him run a term of president. They've just not allowed him to do anything peaceful.
Well, that's one of the problems with the Mueller investigation. Reading a piece in National Review this past week about that, they did several things at the start of that are completely against protocols in law enforcement and specifically against rules in the Justice Department that damaged his presidency, and they've allowed that cloud to linger over him for 2.5 years now, when they knew there's no evidence whatsoever that there was any connection between the Russians and his campaign.
How do we keep letting this happen, John? Why can't something be done to stop it this time? I mean, it's so obvious. I wish Franklin was here to argue this, but
well, I mean, when the FBI director made his statement that they were investigating this, it is expressly against Justice Department rules for them to announce an investigation, and it's even more against the rules in a counterintelligence investigation. And when you have no proof that anybody, matter of fact, when no one's been indicted, you're not supposed to name anyone's name. and yet the FBI director named Donald Trump and the campaign and announced that there was a investigation. That's against all Justice Department policies. So that created a cloud hanging over his administration. And now Mueller, with each one of these indictments, has basically proven that Mueller could have issued an interim decision that there was no connection between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and that would have lifted the cloud off the administration. But he hasn't. And every indictment proves that, because none of these indictments have anything to do with any kind of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
You know good and well this is nothing but a witch hunt.
Well, but the real point is, whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, this impeded the presidency from doing anything productive for the American people. So Mueller and a bunch of people in the FBI who hated Trump's guts, didn't want him to be the president, have allowed this cloud to hang over his presidency on purpose. They've done it to impede his ability to be the president of the United States.
John, as I've said, this is obvious now. It's just obvious. What about this Stone, this guy they just arrested?
Yep.
27 agents. Now, wait a minute. Here's another thing. CNN was there. CNN had been alerted about this. CNN was there when the raid was taking place.
Right.
Do you think we ought to have an investigation into the leak?
Well, yeah, of course we should. They've been leaking all over about this.
I mean, why does this continue to happen?
Well, the
And
first
nothing gets done, John. Nothing gets done.
This was not a violent crime that they are arresting. It's a process crime. He made the statement. He said, look, if they had notified me, I would have presented myself down at the federal building. But they sent 27 armed men before dawn, armed with riot gear, fully automatic machine guns, to bust into his home. That's just crap. That's nothing but theater to make it look as bad as it can, because this investigation, as far as its original intent, collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, has gone absolutely nowhere.
It seemed pretty obvious that it was just theater. It seemed pretty obvious that they only did it
They've done it before.
The viewing audience.
And his arrest and his charging actually proves what we're talking about, because this has, if you read through what he's charged with, basically he was trying to get information out of WikiLeaks about what they had and when they were going to release it.
From Hillary Clinton. From her email messages, right?
But here's the point.
That she was on a private server.
Right, but here's the point. He's trying, and they say this in the indictment, he's trying to get information from WikiLeaks about what they have and when they are going to release it. Now think about that. That means in this indictment, Mueller is admitting that they had no idea what WikiLeaks had, which means they had nothing to do with getting it, and they didn't even know when they were going to release it. That in and of itself, that indictment proves that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. The Russians aren't even in this. Roger Stone was only working with WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks had the connection, supposedly, and I trust the intelligence community. The Russians probably did hack the emails. They'll never prove it, but this shows that Roger Stone had no connection to the Russians. He didn't even know what WikiLeaks had. So this very indictment basically exonerates Trump, but yet they're not saying that. They haven't said that for 2 years now.
John, it's obvious why they don't do it. They don't want to do it.
Well, and there's another thing.
The guy that's heading this investigation, not Mueller, but the one under him, the second in command.
Right.
He's a strong Democrat.
Right.
He was with Hillary the night.
Well, actually, he's been proven. They've lied about this, because they said that they didn't know anything about the dossier before they went to the court. Well, now those dates have all been pushed back 2 or 3 months, which shows that somebody in the FBI, this guy most likely, lied about that.
All this corruption in the FBI and all the corruption, there's enough there just to shut everything down as far as any investigation is anyway, I think.
Well, here's another interesting. Nancy Pelosi, after Roger Stone was indicted, this is her statement. Roger Stone's indictment makes clear there was a deliberate, coordinated effort by Trump campaign officials to subvert the will of the American people during the 2016 election. All right, now think about that in context of what this was. So the Russians most likely hacked the emails and got private emails between Hillary Clinton and John Podesta.
From her private server
Right.
that she had hidden.
Which was illegal. But these are actual emails. So Nancy Pelosi is not saying that any of these emails were fake. So when she says that this was an effort to subvert the will of the American people, what she's saying is the American people finding out truthful statements and what was going on with Hillary Clinton and her campaign was subverting the will of the American people. So she's admitting that telling the truth about who Hillary Clinton was subverting the will of the American people.
Could President Trump allow the guy from WikiLeaks to come back?
Well, look, that's all interesting too. The guy from WikiLeaks is a enemy of the American country, the American people. He was the darling of the liberal left because he was basically going after our intelligence community, he was going after our military community. Well, then apparently he just didn't like Hillary, so he turns and he goes after her. And now they hate him. But he's done tremendous damage with the help of the Democrats and with the help of this Mueller investigation to our entire country. So personally, I'd rather see him arrested.
Well, where I'm going at, bring him home and let him testify. Let's get to the bottom of what he's got. I don't care.
Well, we know what he's got, and we know look, WikiLeaks didn't hack this. The Russians probably did hack it. But it was easy to hack because Hillary was violating the law with how she was maintaining her server. And the point is, no one on the Democrat side has claimed that any of these emails have been falsified. So whatever damage it did to the Hillary Clinton campaign was the truth. So she was damaged by the American people finding out the truth about her.
I think this whole cover-up is to keep the truth unknown about what's happened from the Democratic side.
Well, it's to keep your mind
going all
off
the way
of,
back to Obama.
It's to keep your mind off of what's actually been going on with Hillary and the Democrats and the Obama administration.
John, look at all the things that have been discovered, the lies, the cover-ups that's been going on with the Department of Justice and all this stuff, and no investigations going on in that in any way. Why is that? Why can't we? Where's Jeff? Whatever happened to Jeff Sessions?
Well, part of this is this deep state. I've got a piece in here. Ted Cruz has introduced legislation to impose term limits. And that's one of the points, because you basically have a perpetual government going on. It doesn't matter who's in office. There are career people with opinions, and used to be they I think made some effort to keep their opinions out of their work. They don't when you read the statements that all of these top FBI and Justice Department officials were saying about Donald Trump during the election, there's no doubt that they brought their opinions to work. And that's one of the problems. I don't like the word deep state because it's taken on this kind of half crazy conspiratorial tone, but there is an entrenched government bureaucracy that doesn't like anybody that's not going to play the game.
And the majority of those are from the Democratic side?
Well, there are Republicans too, but the problem with that is that the vast majority of people that believe in big government, that believe big government is the answer, are liberal persuasions. If you're a true conservative, you don't really like that because you don't believe the government's the answer. And it's not the answer.
What is it? Franklin says you don't believe in socialism. What is the police? What is the fire department?
Well, look, there are socialistic policies that can do some good in some cases, in things like community actions that need a coordinated effort, like the police, like the fire department. Personally, I don't like Social Security. Now, that'll get you unelected because the American people aren't putting a lot of time into looking at these issues in depth. They look at Social Security and they say, well, it's something I get. They don't want to be told, by the way, your money could have brought you much, much more return in another vehicle than Social Security. It's around 2% return, which is horrible. Stock market returns on average 9%. I mean, you're talking about...
I can't get 9.
Well, historically,
If
the
you're going to be
average.
safe, you can get about 5.
Well, what I'm saying, if you go back to the Great Depression and the ups and downs and you average it over that time, it's around 9% per year. Now, you're going to have some years you're going to make 12 or 13%. You're going to have years where you make 4 or 5%. You know, last year we were doing pretty good until the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter saw a huge drop off. Now, if you're a retired person and you still have your money in the stock market at 75 years old, that's a really dangerous thing. But part of retirement planning is you put your money in the stock market when you're 20 and 30 and maybe 40, and then around 50 you start moving it into other things that are safer and less volatile. You're not going to make as much money, but you protect your money at that point. So it all depends on what point in your life you're at. But the overarching point is Social Security makes almost nothing for you.
Well, Social Security is not going to go away, and they're going to have to find a way to fund it, and they're going to, they're going to keep on and on and on. The only way I know to do it is to raise the age limits on it.
Well, but Paul Ryan had, and of course he got crucified for it. But just like I said, different people at different stages in their life can do better things with their money. So Paul Ryan's idea was you let people make a choice. And again, that's a big difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Democrats think we're too stupid to make choices and that they need to make them for us. Republicans say, look, we trust you to make choices. Some of you are going to make good, some of you are going to make bad. But Ryan's plan would have allowed a younger person to say, I'm going to put my money in the stock market. Now, at some point, Ryan actually, because they said, oh, people will make bad decisions and they'll be decimated, he actually said, as you get older, the law would actually require you to move more of that money out of the stock market into safer, probably back into Social Security. But his point was, maybe for 20 years, you make 6 or 8 or 10% instead of 2%.
I want to change the subject just a little bit. I want to ask you a question that maybe we can get an understanding, since Franklin's not here. Won't be yelling or anything. So I want to understand, what do you think needs to be done to fix health care? Suggestions.
Well, the insurance companies do have a lot of control, and
Hospitals also.
It is a game. Now, it's a game partly because of the laws that the Congress passes. I've said for years, and part of what Trump has actually done has allowed cross-state competition. In the past, you couldn't buy insurance out of state.
Right.
Well, that means you have, for example, I'll use Farm Bureau as an example in their property insurance. So if you buy Allstate insurance, Allstate is able to sell nationwide home insurance, for example. So if Tennessee has a bunch of big tornadoes that come through, Allstate's, like every other insurance company, is going to get hurt because there's going to be a lot of roofs torn up. But they've got 49 other states that didn't have.
They got California.
Well, but my point is they've got a bunch of states that don't have tornadoes, don't have earthquakes, don't have fires, and so it balances itself out. Farm Bureau, on the other hand, and this is nothing bad. Farm Bureau is a great company. But Farm Bureau is a separate company in each state. So there's Tennessee Farm Bureau, Georgia Farm Bureau. Well, if you have a bunch of tornadoes that come through Tennessee, Farm Bureau doesn't have any balance to mitigate that. So if they take a big hit with a bunch of tornadoes or a bunch of fires like California did, they're in more trouble, and so they have more pressure to raise their premiums. Allstate, because it has all 50 states, has less pressure to raise premiums because some states they made a lot of money in while they lost some in a state that had a bad event. Well, that's the same thing that happens in the medical side. The federal government wouldn't allow us to buy across state lines. And so you don't have that competition. You don't have that balance that some states they make more, some states they make less, so they're able to mitigate overall, and everybody gets a lower price. So that's one of the things Trump administration has already done. We can now buy across state lines. Obamacare, in and of itself, I tell people all the time, I have people ask me this, my premiums are really high and I've got these huge deductibles. One of the problems is, for example, as men over, we're over 50. I guess you're not 50 yet.
Well below 50.
Right.
I'm young.
We're not having any kids, but under Obamacare, every policy we price has to provide maternity coverage. Now, that was just a BS way of saying we're going to tack on extra money on yours. You want to talk about socialism? That's what it is. That was a socialistic principle. We're going to make you buy, for example, every policy had to have pediatric dental care.
Obamacare was one step into the grave for full-time coverage for everyone.
Well, that's what they wanted. They actually wanted it to fail so that they could fold it into national socialized medicine.
I'm trying to discuss a way to win, a way for this to be settled. Right now, I think that the hospitals, they have their hospital associations. They're arguing with the insurance companies. You won't see a hospital put a price up anywhere on anything. They negotiate with the insurance companies directly.
Right.
And then the insurance companies are out here selling policies to the public. You know, why can't we come up with some kind of a price line of how much the doctors need to make, how much the hospitals need to make, and try to put something in? Right, and before I'm through, we have insurance for everyone right now. There's nobody in this world that doesn't have insurance.
Yeah, the problem is after Obamacare.
In America, I mean.
And that was a pretty slick game they played. Everybody's going to have insurance. Yeah. Now, having insurance and having medical care are two different things. So if you've got insurance and you've got a $4,000 or $5,000 premium or a deductible, you don't really have health care because that means you've got to pay $4,000 or $5,000 out of pocket before they start paying for anything.
Yeah.
That's not health care. It's insurance, but it's not health care. So that was their bragging right. Oh, we gave everybody insurance. We didn't really give them health care. We didn't fix it at all. Now, I'll go back to the example John Stossel had, though, on LASIK surgery. LASIK surgery has never been covered by insurance. It's always been considered an elective procedure. So no insurance has been involved in any way, shape, or form. 5 or 10 years ago, LASIK surgery was $5,000 an eye.
Right.
You can get it for $250 an eye now. Now, in about 10 years, it went from $5,000 to $250 with no involvement whatsoever by the government or the insurance. That's the private market.
How did that stay out of the insurance?
Because it's considered, at the time, it was considered an elective procedure. You didn't have to have it done.
Just wear glasses.
Well, I can tell you, like dental implants. Dental implants for especially someone who gets a lower denture at a younger age, dental implants are incredibly important. A lower denture just floats around. It's at best 25% efficient, and people hate them. And you know, when we make them, we do the best we can. But that's like saying I'm making you the best cow manure sandwich I can. It's still a cow manure sandwich.
Right.
But with implants, that denture snaps down. But the insurance and the government still says that those are elective procedures. Actually, they still label them experimental. We've been doing them about 50 years,
right.
But they're considered experimental. So it's like that, and it works twofold. They don't want to pay for something they don't have to, and so there is a legitimate kind of concern there. But then they also use that as a club to avoid paying for things they don't have to pay for. Dental implants should have been ruled as a regular procedure 20 years ago, and they should be covered. And a few insurance companies are starting to cover them. But that's my point. They look at that and say, it's like cosmetic procedures. You don't have to have Botox shots, unless you're getting them for migraines or something like that, so they don't cover it.
Let me ask you a question. If you got rid of the insurance companies and you dealt directly with the doctors and the hospitals for your medical.
But here's your problem. Who's going to deal with the doctors in the hospitals?
Well,
the government.
Well, no. Not if the government's not involved.
Well, I had a local banker tell me.
You're saying the government. I'm saying get the government out. The government has nothing to do with it.
Well,
if I'm sick, I got to go to a doctor or to a hospital.
Right.
Who do I deal with?
Well, I will say that the development and the growth of the insurance business is a huge reason that the prices have gone up.
Well, I mean, you cut the fat out from the insurance company.
Well, but they also play a game. The hospitals, for example, they know they're not going to get paid, but maybe 50 or 60% of what they charge.
That's why they got an aspirin at $10.
If they need $60, then they're going to charge $100 because they're only going to get 60 to begin with out of the insurance company.
Right.
Well, the problem with that is if you're a person that owns their own business or you don't have insurance, they can't charge you the 60. They have to charge you the 100. Well, then you're stuck paying all of that. So it is a game. I just personally think the more the government's gotten involved, the worse it's gotten. Local banker told me that what he would much rather do is have a catastrophic care policy for all of his employees. So if you had a car wreck or if you had cancer, which actually with the kind of deductibles we have now, that's what Obamacare was. It was catastrophic care.
Yeah.
But he wanted to provide that for all of his employees and then say, I'm going to give you $1,500 a year in medical coverage. You can spend it however you want. If you want to go get Botox shots, go get Botox shots. But when your $1,500 is up, I'm done. And what that does is it puts the responsibility back on the patients. For example, with your doctor visits, if you have a $40 copay, you don't care to go. You get a headache, you go to your doctor. It's $40. No big deal. Now, if you were having to pay for that in entirety, if you were paying $150 or $200 for that office visit, like the total charge probably is, you wouldn't go for a headache. You'd be more careful on how you spend your money. Right now, the patients under sort of the insurance plans don't have a ton of responsibility in this outside of if you're really having serious things done. So, they go to the emergency room at the drop of a hat because they only pay a $50 copay.
How's the doc in the boxes working?
I don't like corporate medicine. That's been here's the deal.
It's like if there's a walk-in clinic down here.
Right, but that's a response to how difficult the paperwork and the insurance is. So as a sole proprietor doctor, it takes a ton of time to do all of the paperwork, file all of the insurance forms. You pay 2 or 3 people in your office to do that.
I understand.
That's been the push towards corporate medicine because then you have a corporation that can do it for 100 doctors.
Get rid of insurance companies and deal with the hospitals and the doctors direct.
Getting rid of the insurance companies would be getting rid of the government.
That's
and
exactly
I agree.
right. I mean, I just think we'd get a better deal if we negotiated it ourselves direct. I mean, there's a hospital right here. They want patients. But, right now they're sitting there giving you a price for this insurance company that they've got to inflate everything. If they had a price for an MRI for $200.
Yeah, but here that brings up a whole other issue, this certificate of need issue in the state of Tennessee.
That comes from the hospital association.
Well, it comes from the government too, because they all like control.
Well, the hospital association, I used to deal with them, and they have a big union, and they fight all the time to get more and more and more. That's all they're after is more.
Well,
and
the
more
certificate
and more.
of need is anti-capitalism. It's anti-good business.
That's why they didn't want Erlanger to have their use here. They don't want they don't want 2 hospitals in the town.
But who was going to be damaged by having better access to emergency care? If Erlanger had put an emergency room down on the south end, who's going to be damaged by that? I mean, why would you say no to that?
Well, they said their argument was it would affect the doctors at the hospital over here.
It would just make them have to be more competitive.
And it would lure the doctors towards Chattanooga because they're part of Erlanger's.
Well, then somebody would have built another emergency care on the north end of the county.
That's right.
It ought to be based on the market. And we're over 100,000 people in this community. That's a lot of people to service. You can't tell me that a second hospital or a second emergency room wouldn't be used.
All right, let's take a break and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello. I'm the doctor.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Another SOS, and you're stressing, and that's the time to check in. I check into cash.
It's that time again. Are you more back to school or back to bills? When you need extra cash, text the word quote to 55670 for a free, no obligation quote. Learn how much cash you can pre-qualify for. That's quote to 55670. Get pre-qualified today.
Your one-stop money shop. Check into cash.
Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors, from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners, to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee. 400-5376.
Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. That's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Keith Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right. Every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Why would you put up with a heating and cooling system that cycles on and off when you can have quiet, true comfort, variable speed by train? It runs at low speeds with continuous little adjustments to keep your home comfortable and quiet. It's always been hard to stop a train. Now, it's hard to hear one.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone, day in and day out, nothing will do but a Train. To get the best Train service, call your local Train comfort specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installation for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a train.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back. Franklin's missing this morning, but we found him. He was busy and had something to do and just forgot to give us a call. So anyway, we got that covered. We've got a caller. Let's go ahead and take it. Go ahead, caller.
Well, I hope he don't forget to call in at the court when he can't make it. You know, he wouldn't forget that.
That's exactly right.
Well, I want to congratulate you gentlemen this morning. Talking and speaking one at a time, man, I can understand it all.
See how easy it is?
Well, now, I worked at Bradley Memorial Hospital for 43 years, and when you talk about hospitals, that's very interesting to me. One time, I was in charge of...
You didn't know Bill Torrance, did you?
Oh, yeah. He was the best administrator they ever had up there. If he'd have stayed there...
He wouldn't tell you a joke every now and then, would he?
Oh, yeah. I had to walk off, I'd walk off and leave him. Yeah, I've got a fish picture when he and I and a bunch of administrators and a pharmacist went down to Florida, and we caught 80 king mackerel. They was, I don't remember how many there was.
Hey, wait a minute. Y'all didn't go down there on our dime, did you?
No.
Bill wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, Bill wouldn't have done that, would he?
No, he wouldn't. I tell you. And who did we have? Who was that judge back years ago? Down there.
Witt?
The county judge. I forgot.
I can't remember.
He was Mr. Dunlap. You remember him, John Dunlap?
Yeah, Johnny. Yeah.
He was the chairman of the board of the hospital, and years ago he'd come up and look at every check, not employee check, I don't think. But
Johnny was a good conservative Southern Democrat. He was personal friends with Strom Thurmond, and he was a Democrat, but he was a conservative Democrat.
Oh yeah. And if he'd been around, and Mr. Kelly had been around, then that what was it they were head of at the bank? Was it a credit union down there?
I knew Mr. Dunlap, but I was a pretty young child at the time.
All right. I know you got a question for us this morning.
Oh, I may have comments too.
Okay. All right.
To Joe Winnie down at Erlanger a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, don't worry about it getting a certificate of need to build that building down there. Just come on up here, build your building, and you got the land, and you got your design. Just go ahead and build it. Don't put in your MRI, but build the room. You can use it for storage, and don't put in your observation bed. Build it and put out there Erlanger walk-in clinic. And then you can bring your ambulances up here, which will help relieve the ambulance service of some of their work that they're doing, which will be helpful, I understand. And, of course, their helicopter could come down there if needed. And then keep applying for the certificate of need. And when you get it, you just change the name. Put your MRI in and put your.
I think it'd be easier for them just to sue them over in Nashville.
Hey, well, I hope that somebody comes up with, and we can get rid of their certificate of need. There's less than a dozen.
Well, let me ask you something. Are you for all the liquor stores that want to open?
Yeah, well, let me say this. I voted against the liquor stores, so
okay.
We're on different sides, probably.
So I voted against it, too.
But
who said that?
John.
But since they're coming, do you think we need to limit them to 5 or let them have as many as they want?
No, we are supposed to have free enterprise in this country, okay?
Okay.
And then what are they going to limit next? Are they going to tell the dentist how many dentists we can have in town? Are we going to tell the barber shops how many we can have, the restaurants,
So, in other words, if 15 liquor stores want to open in town, let them open. Let the weak ones fall, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, And somebody told me, and y'all can laugh about this if you want. I had a lady tell me, well, we just pray they don't go in there and they'll just move out, But I'll tell you something.
I think they've got restrictions on it. They got to have so much money. They got to have size, and they got to have all these other things. It's going to cost somebody enough money that a small man's not going to be able to get into it.
But I was told Etowah had 2, and one of them's already gone out of business at this point.
Right.
I think Athens has 1, and it's still in business. But the profit margin on those, from what I understand, is actually really tight.
Yeah.
There's not a huge profit margin on them.
Well, Yeah, they ought to have free enterprise basically on everything around here, even hospitals. You know, that's what I think. But I'm glad they changed that. But still, once if you read it, and I'm sure you did, once if they come back down to 5, they won't give any more license. But the thing about it, because the city approves them, does not mean that the state's going to approve them necessarily.
Well, the state, I actually checked on that yesterday. There's no limit on the state's level. They have their requirements, but they don't have any limits.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I said this. You know, we're copying about other cities, I understand. What did this city do? What did that city do? Well, these people are intelligent down there. They're smart enough to come up with their own rules without copying everybody else, you know?
All right.
Well, I'm so glad that you took my call.
All right.
I'm full of it.
See you again. Bye-bye. John, you wanted to say something about the NATO Secretary General this morning.
Yeah, you know, Franklin and all the Democrats said that Trump was destroying NATO and all. Well, this is the NATO Secretary General. That's the guy in charge, okay? Let me see if I can say it, Stoltenberg. This was a text he sent out. Thanks to clear message from @RealDonaldTrump, the NATO members added $100 billion to alliance spending. It's clear Trump's message had a huge impact. We see real money and some real results. NATO allies have heard the president loud and clear, and now NATO allies are stepping up. This is good news.
And all the Democrats are claiming that Americans are not, Trump is not good for NATO.
Well, the NATO secretary said we actually see more fair burden sharing. So that's the guy in charge of NATO openly bragging about the president's efforts to get more funding and $100 billion.
How do you think President Trump's doing on foreign policy?
I mean, I like some of the things and I don't like some of the things. I criticized Obama when he announced that we were pulling out of Iraq. I think announcing that we're pulling out of Syria was probably a mistake. I think pulling out, I would have left some more people in there. But that's a debate on the right in some ways more than it is the left. You know, there are people like Rand Paul that don't think we ought to be doing any of that.
Right.
There are hawks on the right that think we ought to, we're the biggest guy in the world and we have to be involved in some of these things. I think you lose power when you don't have a hand in the game. So I'm not sure I like pulling out completely, because what you've done is you've turned it over to the Iranians and the Russians. Well, the problem with that is you've got all these other countries. So if you're sitting there and you're surrounding Syria, you're really worried about what's going to happen to it. So if the United States pulls out, we're not a player in that game with all the other countries involved. Mm-hmm. So I don't support him there, but I do support him other places.
Did you see Tom Brokaw making his
speech?
He
did absolutely nothing wrong. And the only mistake he made was apologizing for it.
Well, basically, Tom Brokaw, what was he, ABC, NBC news anchor for years?
I don't remember what he was. I think he was ABC.
One of the major networks. Basically got up and did some assimilation remarks about...
It was in a panel discussion.
Yeah, and basically that, that he thought that if you came to America, that if you wanted to be an American citizen, you need to learn...
But the problem is he specifically said the Hispanic community, that they need to work at assimilating more and they need to work at speaking English. Geraldo Rivera was on and he said, look, I don't think Brokaw had any, ill intent, but he's poorly informed, because he said that Hispanics after the first generation, not only do they speak English, they don't speak Spanish anymore. They have to go back to school to learn Spanish. I think that's Brokaw was making a generalized statement.
Right.
And of course, we're always a victim culture these days, so everybody wants to be a victim. So his mistake, from my standpoint, was apologizing for what he said.
Mm-hmm. What are we going to do with the people coming at the wall? Trump administration is going starting to have them remain in Mexico.
Well, we've we've set up to where we've made it easier for minors to apply for asylum in their home countries.
Right.
Which means they stay in their home countries until we decide whether they're approved for asylum or not. I don't think that'll help, because most of these people coming are not going to actually qualify for asylum. That's all smoke and mirrors. It's just a reason to get into the country.
Yeah. You want to talk about abortion this morning also?
Yeah. New York just passed a new abortion law. Now, their explanation was that they had an archaic old law and they had to update it. There's no way to describe this law other than it's legalized infanticide. It allows abortion. First off, it doesn't have to be a doctor anymore. It can be a doctor or anybody, I think they say permitted. So you're not even going to have doctors doing this anymore. But it allows it up to delivery. Now, Virginia is getting ready to follow suit, and the sponsor of the law in Virginia was actually asked if the mother is on the birthing table and she's dilating. So in other words, she's in the process of delivery. Could you abort that baby? And she said, yes, you could. Now, here's a real question for you. If the Democrat Party, like they always claim, say they want abortion to be limited and few in scope, and that it's not about, it's not about abortion, why wouldn't you deliver that baby? If you've got that's a full-term baby, which means it's viable. It can live outside the womb. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and deliver it and let someone adopt it? Well, the obvious answer is it's about the existence of that baby. It means that mother or the father, because it also says that, that they have some rights in this too, just says, I don't want the baby to exist. There's no other way to describe that except murder.
Well, here's what it's going to lead to, John. It would allow sex selection.
Oh, absolutely.
In other words, if they didn't want a girl, and it was a girl, they could abort it. And also, they're saying that it delayed or done in a manner to permit organ harvesting.
Well, yeah, they can do that. They could let that baby develop to the point where they
could just get the organs.
Right. Well, by the way, the New York law also reduced the penalties for assaulting a pregnant woman. Now, that's someone carrying a wanted child. So this is a woman who's pregnant, who wants her baby. Someone assaults her, knocks her to the floor, stomps on her belly, which has happened lots of times. They decrease the penalties for the person who ended that life.
Why would they do that? I mean, what is the purpose of this crap?
There's no way to explain it other than they're fanatics.
I mean, we're talking about abortions after 8 months.
By the way,
that's murder.
Under the archaic law that they were supposedly fixing, the archaic law in New York also had protections for a child who survived an abortion. And that happens. So the baby survives the abortion and is laying on the table. The archaic law required the doctor and the nurses to give that baby care. Now, what they'll do, because they've done it before, I've brought actual stories with real people's names in here before, where they take that baby and they sit it in the, the back room, the cloakroom, and let it die. They just set it on the table and let it die. Now, that's better than actually killing it. By the way, only 7 nations in the world allow abortions after the 20th week, and those nations include China and North Korea. So 2 of the nations that we're in bed with are China and North Korea on this law. And just this is something we don't do with a lot of issues. We kind of gloss over it, okay? So I just want to let everybody know how this is done. The baby now this is a late-term 3rd trimester abortion. The baby is injected with a poison directly into his skull or his torso. He then suffers a hideously painful death, which he will certainly feel because he has a fully developed nervous system. The mother carries the corpse around in her womb for a day. The next day, there's an ultrasound check done to see if the baby's dead. If it's not dead, they inject it with more poison, and she carries it for another day before they abort that baby. And of course, you know what partial birth abortion is.
John, you're running off our listeners.
Well, people
this is hard to even listen
But
to.
here's what I know it's hard, and that's why the media doesn't allow those kind of Matter of fact, on campus, there's a pro-life group that has big, huge posters made of aborted fetuses. The campuses regularly run those people off campus because they say that's disturbing. Now, isn't that the party that says they're the science party? If you're the science party, why would you be against photographs of the actual procedure that you want to legalize?
It's amazing how things like this are even options for us to even talk about anymore.
Well, Virginia's getting ready to pass the same. The Democrats have taken control of Virginia, so they're getting ready to pass it in Virginia.
Well, Vermont just passed their bill, abortion without
a
limits.
phone call. And I've heard, though, that this is a reason why we shouldn't try to overturn Roe v. Wade and give it to the states, because this is what the states will do with it. We got a phone call. You ready, Steve?
Let's take it.
You're live.
Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, Steve, everybody, how's it going this morning?
Good morning. Good morning.
I have got a solution on building that wall, if you don't let me hear it real fast.
I do, too. I'll tell you after you tell me yours. I'll tell you mine after you tell me yours.
All right, well, bring the troops, bring all our troops and let them start building the wall, because we do have engineers that can build that wall, and it costs us less money, and we get it built.
Well, you're talking about the military?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably where it's going to go next. I really do think that's what's going to happen. And go ahead, John.
Well, there's actually, to follow up on what he's saying, there's a way for Trump to do that. He'll declare a national emergency, but he needs to do a couple of things. He needs to start building in a portion of Texas in the 5th Judicial District. That's a much more favorable district, because the first thing the opponents of the wall, the Democrats, are going to do is they're going to file for an injunction. And this whole BS about a district court judge being able to make a nationwide injunction, Andrew Jackson had the same kind of situation. Chief Justice Marshall overturned a conviction of some men for him that they had violated a Georgia law. So this was Jackson's comment. He said, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. So what Trump needs to do is just start building it. And when they do this nationwide injunction, he can just say, look, you made the injunction, how are you going to enforce it? I'm going to build the wall.
All right, guys, appreciate you.
All right, I'm going to tell you mine now.
What's your...
I think we all just put 2 little old chain link fence up and put a danger sign on each side of it and put landmines in between it.
Well, I'm not real bothered by that.
I mean, if you can't read, put it in several languages so that, and maybe have a recording that they play, do not come any closer. Something.
Well, you won't have but a couple of people mess that up.
Well, I mean, if somebody tries to come across, there might be a lesson learned or two, but I think they'll stop. Landmine it, put a couple of little cheap fences up. It's a simple solution to a big problem.
By the way, Texas has found 95,000 non-U.S. citizens registered to vote, and 58,000 of those have actually voted in recent elections.
Now, Franklin would argue with that one. I know he would. We got a caller. We're going to go ahead and let this call come in. We'll ask them what they think. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Yeah, we on the wall talk yet?
Yeah, we're talking.
All right. Yes, the thing about the wall is the Congress has already passed numerous bills and turned into laws to build the wall, and they've already authorized, I think, around $48 billion. Trump's only asking for 25, but they've already authorized that as a law.
But they're saying that's a joke to authorize something. That doesn't mean it to ever be spent.
But then the other thing is that if he goes ahead and does this, and we got waves and waves of people trying to come in over here in the thousands. If that's not a national emergency, nothing is. Mm-hmm. But then the other thing is about the lower courts. If you look at the Constitution doesn't create the lower courts. It's a creation of the Congress.
That's right.
Congress creates those. The Supreme Court is created by the Constitution, which means actually, if you think about it and look at what the founders designed, what they set up initially was the Supreme Court is supposed to be the one of the co-equal branches of government, not with certain enumerated powers, not the lower courts. The lower courts serve because Congress made them, and they serve on the behest of Congress, not the Constitution. So if I was Trump, I would just flat out ignore them and tell them, well, I'll wait until it gets to the Supreme Court and just continue to build a wall until it does.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, because the whole lot, this thing where these district judges are issuing nationwide stays, there's no legal basis for that.
When did this start?
It started with Donald Trump. The first time we've seen that is with these when they were.
Well, they are Obama appointees, right?
Yes, they were issuing these nationwide stays against his immigration policy, against several of his policies. There's no basis for that. So that's one of the reasons you start building it in the 5th District. You can get a declaratory judgment out of one of the judges in the 5th District against that. And basically, just like Jackson said, well, fine, you issued it. How are you going to enforce it? Because you got no basis for it.
Right.
So I agree. I think he ignores it and keeps going.
I agree.
Well, Obama did with Obamacare, so it didn't matter how many district judges said it was unconstitutional or appellate court said it was unconstitutional. He kept rolling with it. So, same thing.
You're right.
Bye.
Thanks for calling.
All right. I got one story I want to get in before we go. This is
go
a
ahead.
purely news type story.
Okay. Good.
So this comes from the Jerusalem Post. Okay. So this is a statement from them. We believe we will offer in a year's time a complete cure for cancer. This is from the Accelerated Evolution Biotechnologies Limited. Our cancer cure will be effective from day one, will last a duration of a few weeks, and will have no or minimal side effects at a much lower cost than other treatments on the market. Our solution will be both generic and personal. But now they also kind of cleared and said, look, it may be a decade before we're actually able to distribute it to the population. And to get into a little bit of the science, it's called mutato, which is a aneurysm for, not aneurysm, anyway, multiple target toxins. So now the chemotherapies target one site. So what they do is they target at least 3 peptides on the same structure with a strong toxin. We made sure that the treatment will not be affected by mutations. Cancer cells can mutate in such a way that targeted receptors are dropped by the cancer. So currently what they do is they target one receptor on the cancer site. Well, the cancer mutates, and then that toxin is no longer effective. So what they're doing is they're targeting multiple sites. Instead of attacking receptors one at a time, we attack receptors 3 at a time. Not even cancer can mutate 3 receptors at a time. The Israeli scientists also say the drug will reduce the amount of sickness one feels during cancer treatments due to the fact that this treatment actually targets cancer cells specifically, unlike others which target the wrong targets. Now, eventually, each patient will provide a piece of his biopsy to the lab, which would then analyze it and know which receptors are overexpressed. The patient could likely stop treatment after only a few weeks and be done.
That'd be wonderful,
So
wouldn't it?
they think they've actually found the cure for cancer.
And it's coming from Israel.
Yeah, let me say that. And you look, the Bible says a lot of things about who the Israelis are and who will be. Not all of of Israel will be taken up at end times and all. But I did think it was interesting that if it's true, the cure for cancer came from God's chosen people.
Well, that's a good comment, John. A good one to end on. So we've had a nice, calm day. And we're having technical problems now. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and